Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking into something really interesting from Buddhist thought, this idea of adhipateyya. And, it's not about politics like democracy versus dictatorship or anything like that.
Oh, not at all.
It's much more personal. It's about what we hold most important, where we place our values, really.
Exactly. Adhipateyya basically means taking as paramount.
Okay.
And, well, in Buddhism, there are three main ways people tend to do this.
Okay.
First, there's Dhamma-adhipateyya. That's all about prioritizing righteousness,
Right.
the Dhamma.
Right, the principles.
Yeah. Then you've got Atta-adhipateyya, which is where the self, the ego, that comes first.
Okay.
And there's also Loka-adhipateyya, which is valuing what the majority thinks, the crowd view. But we'll mainly touch on that one.
Right. So for this deep dive, we really want to get into Dhamma-adhipateyya versus Atta-adhipateyya. This seem like the core concepts.
They really are. Loka-adhipateyya, following the crowd, often kind of feeds back into the other two anyway. Well, you might follow the crowd because you want acceptance, which is sort of Atta-adhipateyya, right? Self-interest.
Ah, okay.
Or you might think, well, the majority must be right, which is maybe a kind of leaning towards Dhamma, but maybe not fully thought through.
Gotcha. So focusing on Dhamma versus Atta righteousness versus self, that gets us right to the heart of our value systems.
Exactly. Gives us the clearest picture.
So the big question for you listening as we explore this is, in your daily life, when you make choices, what's really guiding you? Is it what you believe is right? Or is it more about what you want, what you prefer in that moment? Let's dig into that.
Okay, so let's unpack these two main ideas a bit more clearly. Dhamma-adhipateyya, like we said, it's making correctness, the Dhamma, your priority.
And Dhamma isn't just rules, it's more like ethical conduct.
Exactly. Ethical behavior, doing what's right, what's just. Fundamentally, not harming others. When Dhamma guides you, your actions are usually rooted in morality, in considering everyone's well-being.
Right. And the flip side is Atta-adhipateyya.
That's where your benefit, your desires come first. Often, that takes priority over what's actually right, or even, the rules.
It really highlights how tough it can be to stick to ethics when self-interest kicks in. Those cravings. What'd you call them?
Kalisa?
Kilissa, yeah. Defilements, cravings, they're powerful. And understanding their influence is key to seeing why Atta-adhipateyya has such a pull.
So they cloud our judgment.
Absolutely. Desire for pleasure, comfort, gain. It can easily push aside our sense of what's right. So, really simply put, Dhamma-adhipateyya is prioritizing what is right. Atta-adhipateyya is prioritizing what feels good to you.
That contrast makes it very clear. Okay, so how does this actually show up? Like in just everyday stuff, eating, for instance.
Oh, eating is a great example. Someone practicing Dhamma-adhipateyya, they might choose food based on, nutrition, what gives them strength to do their duties, to live well.
So function over flavor, maybe.
Function and well-being, yeah. The purpose of eating is sustenance.
Okay. And Atta-adhipateyya eating. That's driven by taste, enjoyment. Sweet, sour, spicy, how it looks. Even if you know it's loaded with fat or sugar, or maybe even risky.
Like resisting that cake, or maybe eating, say, raw fish dishes, even knowing the parasite risks for liver cancer that are sometimes mentioned.
Exactly. It's that immediate pleasure winning out over long-term health. Or even ignoring known risks like, diabetes, heart disease, kidney failure from unhealthy diets. You know it's not right for your body, but the desire is stronger.
Okay. What about studying? How does this apply to learning?
Well, Dhamma-adhipateyya in studying would look like diligence, honesty, really trying to understand doing your own work, being ethical during exams, valuing the knowledge itself.
Right, genuine effort.
Whereas Atta-adhipateyya, maybe sporadic studying, only focusing on subjects you like.
Yeah.
Maybe plagiarizing homework because it's easier.
Or cheating on a test.
Yeah, cheating to get the grade, even though you know it's wrong. The priority is convenience, the desired outcome, not the honest process.
Let's shift gears. What about work, our jobs?
Okay, at work, Dhamma-adhipateyya means responsibility. Doing your best, even on tasks you don't like, because it's your duty. Integrity. Atta-adhipateyya, though, might mean dodging disliked tasks, only putting effort into things that bring personal gain or recognition.
That what's in it for me attitude.
Exactly. Self-interest, driving engagement, not responsibility to the role or the team.
Even our phones, right? That's got to be a big one today.
Oh, absolutely. Dhamma-adhipateyya using it as a tool for work, info, necessary calls. Entertainment is moderated, doesn't get in the way of responsibilities.
Balanced.
Yeah. But Atta-adhipateyya phone use, well, you see it everywhere. Excessive entertainment, movies, music, Endless scrolling, maybe online gambling, gaming.
Leading to neglect.
Leading to neglect of duties, yeah.
Yeah.
Prioritizing that immediate digital hit over real-world responsibilities.
Okay, this is really interesting when you think about relationships with other people. That seems complex.
It really is. Dhamma-adhipateyya in relationships. That means considering others' feelings, avoiding exploitation, being willing to sacrifice, maybe be patient, tolerate things, rather than just reacting emotionally.
Building harmony.
Yes. Ethical connections. Atta-adhipateyya, on the other hand, can mean ignoring how others feel, maybe exploiting them if possible, reacting with anger when things don't go your way, lack of consideration.
It really defines how we act towards people, doesn't it?
Fundamentally. We could even see this play out in, say, spiritual practice, like at a monastery or temple.
How so?
Someone embracing Dhamma-adhipateyya there would follow the routines, the rules, getting up early for chanting, even if they're tired, participating in communal work, because they value the practice, the community principles.
Even when it's inconvenient.
Right. But someone driven by Atta-adhipateyya, they might pick and choose. Skip ceremonies if they don't feel like it, avoid chores they dislike. Their personal comfort comes first.
It seems like telling the difference, though, between what's really right and what we just prefer. That's not always easy, is it?
No, it's not. It can be very subtle. And that's where those kilesas, the cravings, get really clever.
How do you mean clever?
They can disguise preference as righteousness,
Yeah.
especially when it benefits us. Our desires can kind of warp our internal compass.
That's tricky. Can you give an example of that kind of self-deception?
Sure. Think about year-end bonuses at work.
Okay.
Someone operating from Atta-adhipateyya might get really upset, claim it's totally unfair, implying it's unrighteous if they get a smaller bonus than others. They might feel genuinely indignant.
Right, demanding equality.
Yeah. But let's say the tables are turned. They get a much bigger bonus than everyone else.
Ah.
Suddenly, the unfairness of unequal distribution might not seem so pressing. They probably won't feel that same indignation that others got less. The personal gain just quiets the demand for righteousness.
So the definition shifts based on whether you benefit or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas true Dhamma-adhipateyya would recognize the potential unfairness either way. The principle holds regardless of personal gain.
Wow. So we tend to shout righteousness when we're losing out, but maybe whisper it or ignore it when we're winning.
That really captures it.
Yeah.
And it shows how easily our idea of fairness itself can bend to fit our desires.
You mentioned an example about that, didn't you? From a village.
Yes, a really telling one from maybe 30, 40 years ago. Before local governments were really handling things, a village water pump broke.
Okay.
An aid worker suggested everyone chip in the same small amount, say 10 baht each, for repairs. Simple, equal contribution.
Seems fair.
But some villagers objected strongly. They said, that's not fair. We live far away. We use it less. We should pay less, maybe only 5 baht.
So for them, fairness meant unequal payment based on use?
Precisely. Their preference was to pay less, so they defined fairness that way. Okay, fast forward a month, cold weather hits. Someone donates blankets, but not enough for everyone.
Oh, dear.
The elder talks to residents, suggests maybe giving more blankets, say 2, to households who always help with village work, and 1 to those less involved. Try to reward contribution.
And how did that go down?
Uproar. Some of the same villagers who argued for unequal payment for the pump now cried, unfair.
You're kidding.
No. Now, fairness meant equal distribution. Everyone gets 1 blanket, regardless of contribution. Their preference now was equal shares, so that became the definition of fair.
That's incredible. So fairness just becomes a tool to justify whatever outcome suits you best at the time.
It really shows how, without vigilance, righteousness and preference get tangled up. What feels good starts getting labeled as what is right.
That requires a lot of self-awareness. But there's also a warning, isn't there, about being too attached to being right.
Yes, a very important one. Getting rigidly attached to your idea of righteousness can be dangerous.
How so?
It can lead to intolerance, anger. When you see something you think is wrong, that rigid attachment can make you react, well, unrighteously.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, the source mentioned a new monastic maybe standing while drinking water, which was against a local custom there. A senior monastic saw this and actually hit her on the back.
Hit her.
Yeah, believing they were enforcing a rule upholding righteousness. But the action itself, hitting someone out of anger or excessive attachment to a rule, that's not Dhamma-adhipateyya.
Wow. The method was wrong, even if the perceived infraction was real.
Exactly. Another example. A layperson's phone rings loudly during a sermon. Big disruption.
Oopus.
The monk giving the sermon, who was very strict, reacted furiously, publicly scolded the person really harshly.
Ouch.
Now, the phone ringing was wrong, yes, but the monk's angry outburst, likely driven by personal annoyance, displeasure, that rigid attachment to silence, not just pure righteousness.
So knowing right from wrong is good. Acting on it is Dhamma-adhipateyya, but clinging too tightly to your version of right can twist things.
It can quickly turn perceived wrong into personal displeasure, leading you to act wrongly yourself.
Which leads to maybe the scariest part, doing wrong things while thinking you're being righteous.
Exactly. It's a dangerous paradox.
Yeah.
People commit objectively wrong acts, genuinely believing they're serving a righteous cause.
How does that work?
It's often driven by those hidden kilesa, by Atta-adhipateyya masquerading as Dhamma-adhipateyya. Think of extreme cases. Violence in the name of politics or religion. Terrorism.
People convinced they're fighting for the right side.
And convinced. A difference of opinion gets labeled as wrongdoing. That rigid certainty then justifies harmful actions against the wrongdoers. The real driver is often ego, self-interest, intolerance, just wrapped up in the language of righteousness.
It's a sobering thought, how easily self-interest can wear the mask of principle.
It requires constant self-reflection, doesn't it? A real honesty about our own motivations to avoid that trap.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a really insightful depth dive. So to kind of wrap it up, the core distinction is Dhamma-adhipateyya, prioritizing what's right, versus Atta-adhipateyya, prioritizing yourself, your preferences.
And the challenge, as we've seen, is consistently choosing right over preference. They get tangled so easily. Our desires subtly shape what we even perceive as right. It takes real awareness.
So, as we finish up, maybe a final thought for you listening. Reflect on a recent choice you made, a decision, an action. Try to be honest with yourself. Were you really guided by what was right? Or was it maybe more about what felt good, what was agreeable, what benefited you in that moment?
Yeah, consider how understanding this difference, Dhamma-adhipateyya versus Atta-adhipateyya, might actually change how you approach things moving forward. It's definitely something worth thinking about.